From the first time Peppermint Butler appears, he seems harmless. His small size, soft voice, and polite demeanor fit neatly into the image of a perfect Candy Kingdom servant. He is quiet, obedient, and always near Princess Bubblegum, ready with tea, information, or calm reassurance. Yet, beneath that sugary exterior lives one of the most morally complex figures in OO. Peppermint Butler is both servant and sorcerer, loyal friend and manipulator, protector and schemer. His story is not about corruption or betrayal, but about coexistence between light and shadow. The struggle of a being who serves goodness while embracing darkness to preserve it. Peppermint Butler's dual life begins in the court of Princess Bubblegum, where loyalty is more than a moral stance, it is a form of survival. The Candy Kingdom thrives under Bubblegum's rational control, yet its existence depends on constant vigilance. To live near her is to live in the presence of someone who sees morality as a scientific construct, something that can be molded for the sake of stability. Peppermint Butler learns from her example that the world cannot be sustained by kindness alone. He takes this principle further than she ever does, venturing into areas she refuses to tread. Where Bubblegum creates through logic, Peppermint Butler defends through secrecy. His immersion in the dark arts is not a rebellion against Bubblegum's order, but an extension of it. He becomes her hidden arm, the quiet hand that deals with problems too impure for royal protocol. Peppermint Butler studies necromancy, communes with demons, and calls upon entities that should never know his name. He does not do this for personal gain. He does it to ensure that the kingdom survives forces beyond its reach. OO is a place where cosmic entities intervene without warning, where curses linger from lost civilizations, and where death itself is only a conversation away. To protect what he loves, Peppermint Butler becomes fluent in everything that terrifies others. His duality is reflected in how he interacts with the people around him. To most citizens, he remains the picture of innocence. His tone is measured, his gestures soft, his words deferential. He hides his dark knowledge behind impeccable manners. This deception is not rooted in shame, but in necessity. In a land of fragile candy people, fear spreads faster than truth. If the kingdom knew the full extent of his powers, his presence would become a source of panic rather than comfort. By maintaining his disguise, he protects both his image and their peace. Among those who know his secret, respect mingles with fear. Death himself acknowledges Peppermint Butler as someone with authority. Magic users like Abracadaniel or Huntress Wizard treat him with wary familiarity, aware that beneath the surface of this polite confection lies an intellect that moves easily between the living and the dead. He can summon spirits, converse with demons, and slip through magical hierarchies with ease. Yet even at his most commanding, he remains a servant. The contradiction defines him, immense power contained within unwavering obedience. This contradiction becomes central to his morality. Peppermint Butler's loyalty is not blind devotion, but calculated faith. He recognizes Princess Bubblegum's flaws, her tendency toward control, her manipulative streak, her capacity for cold judgment, yet he serves her anyway. To him, she represents the fragile balance that keeps OO from falling into chaos. His willingness to commit immoral acts on her behalf reveals a chilling kind of virtue. He becomes the moral instrument of someone who refuses to dirty her own hands. In doing so, he redefines what it means to serve. He protects not only her safety, but also her purity. The darker side of Peppermint Butler's morality emerges through his fascination with death. His interactions with the underworld suggest that he has crossed lines no other Candy citizen could comprehend. He has visited the land of the dead and returned unharmed. He commands forces that normally require years of corruption to master. Yet his use of dark magic is restrained. He never unleashes it for chaos or domination. His relationship with the occult is pragmatic. When he summons spirits or makes deals with shadowy figures, it is always for a purpose that ultimately aligns with preservation. His power exists within boundaries, self-imposed and carefully maintained. Still, every secret life demands a cost. Over time, the gap between what Peppermint Butler shows and what he truly is begins to erode his place in the kingdom. Even if he hides his powers, traces of the darkness cling to him. There are moments when his smile lingers too long, when his words carry double meanings, when his presence unsettles those who sense something unnatural beneath his surface. He becomes a living contradiction, a Candyman with a soul marked by forbidden magic. The sweetness of his exterior becomes a mask for something ancient, something that even he may no longer fully control. The culmination of this dual life arrives with his transformation after the Great Gum War. Canonically, the aftermath leaves him reborn as a younger version of himself, stripped of his full powers and memory. This regression is not punishment, but renewal. The world that emerges from the war is no longer one that needs secret enforcers lurking in the dark. Ooh begins to heal, and with it, Peppermint Butler is given a chance to live without the weight of his secrets. Yet the young Peppermint Butler, often called Pep But, still carries echoes of his former self. He is drawn to magic instinctively, as if his past refuses to remain buried. His new life becomes a quiet reflection on morality and identity. As Pep But trains in Wizard City, his struggle between light and darkness takes on a different form. No longer a powerful servant of the crown, he must earn his place in a hierarchy that sees him as an outsider. His former self's reputation haunts him. Teachers and students whisper about the old Peppermint Butler's misdeeds, unsure whether the new version shares that same darkness. This tension forms the foundation of his redemption arc. The young Peppermint Butler must confront the consequences of a life he no longer remembers but is still responsible for. His journey becomes one of reclaiming moral clarity, while accepting that his past self's choices were made from conviction, not malice. In Wizard City, he learns humility in a new way. The older Peppermint Butler had been a figure of quiet authority. The younger one must submit to others' judgment and earn trust piece by piece. He experiences what it means to be underestimated, to be dismissed, and to be punished for mistakes that are not his own. This experience reshapes his understanding of morality. Instead of balancing light and dark as weapons, he learns to integrate them as parts of his identity. His curiosity about dark magic remains, but it is tempered by self-awareness. He begins to see that true mastery is not about control or secrecy. It is about understanding the reasons one seeks power in the first place. The redemption of Peppermint Butler lies not in the abandonment of magic, but in the recognition of balance. He cannot erase the darkness from his soul, because that darkness once served a purpose. What he can do is transform his relationship to it. The older version of himself wielded darkness to protect others. The younger learns to engage with it, to understand himself. This distinction marks the evolution of his morality. He is no longer an agent of someone else's ideals, but a seeker of his own truth. Even after his transformation, traces of his old loyalty remain. He still holds affection for Princess Bubblegum, though it is less hierarchical and more reflective. He recognizes her as part of his past, not as the center of his existence. The bond between them, though changed, endures as a quiet echo of what once defined his life. This subtle shift illustrates that redemption in Ooh rarely means cleansing away the past. It means finding peace with it. Peppermint Butler's story is not one of salvation through purity, but through acceptance. The series' final portrayal of him reinforces this lesson. He is no longer the secret power behind the throne, or the manipulative shadow within the kingdom. Instead, he becomes a symbol of reconciliation between knowledge and innocence. The same peppermint candy who once trafficked with demons now teaches students in Wizard City, guiding them toward balance. His knowledge of dark forces becomes a tool for education rather than fear. By sharing what he once hid, he breaks the cycle of secrecy that defined his earlier life. Through this evolution, Peppermint Butler's morality becomes one of nuanced realism. He shows that goodness in Ooh is not a matter of purity, but of intention. His earlier self embodied the idea that sometimes moral compromise is the price of survival. His later self embodies the idea that understanding those compromises can lead to peace. Both forms are true, both necessary. The dark magician and the gentle mentor are not opposites, but reflections of a single soul learning to live in a world that demands both compassion and strength. In the end, Peppermint Butler stands as one of the most morally complete characters in Adventure Time. His story bridges the gap between faith and pragmatism, service and autonomy, sin and growth. He does not seek absolution because he never saw his actions as evil. Instead, he seeks understanding of himself, of the forces he serves, and of the world that shaped him. His legacy is not one of power or fame, but of quiet endurance. He carries the memory of darkness without allowing it to define him. Knowledge in Ooh is never neutral. Every secret holds a cost. Every truth carries a shadow. Peppermint Butler understands this more deeply than almost anyone. From the moment he begins his descent into forbidden study, he accepts that the more he learns, the more he will lose. Yet he pursues that path willingly. Knowledge to him is not about curiosity or ambition. It is about survival. He knows that the forces governing Ooh do not follow mortal logic. They shift with emotion, memory, and ancient promises. To protect what he loves, he needs to understand those laws, no matter the price. In the earliest days of his practice, Peppermint Butler studies in secret. The Candy Kingdom is built on innocence, its people too fragile to confront the realities of the cosmos. He hides his books beneath layers of sweetness, buried under the facade of a tidy servant's life. He learns from spirits, demons, and old gods. His hands are steady, his manners perfect, but his nights are filled with whispers from realms beyond time. He learns how to call death by name, how to bend the space between life and oblivion, how to bargain with beings who measure worth in souls. Each lesson takes something from him, pieces of purity, fragments of peace, but he does not hesitate. What makes Peppermint Butler remarkable is that he never loses sight of purpose. He studies the dark arts not to wield power, but to understand it. He does not crave mastery for its own sake. He sees power as a tool, one that can be turned toward protection. When he summons spirits or deals with demons, he does so for control, not chaos. He learns how to outwit darkness by walking beside it. Yet every transaction with the unseen deepens the rift between him and the rest of his kind. His soul becomes marked with echoes that candy bodies were never meant to hold. In this pursuit, his morality begins to blur. He convinces himself that intention justifies means, that a clean conscience is less important than a stable kingdom. When he manipulates others, it is for safety. When he hides truths from Bubblegum, it is to protect her from burden. His logic becomes circular. He believes that secrecy sustains peace, even when the secrecy itself breeds danger. Each act of concealment makes him more isolated, but also more necessary. He becomes the unseen foundation beneath the Candy Kingdom's order, the one who guards against the nightmares no one else dares to face. The world of Ooh rewards those who accept contradictions. Peppermint Butler embodies this perfectly. He can brew tea in the morning and perform necromancy at night, and both acts feel equally natural to him. He can bow before Bubblegum and whisper to death in the same breath. This balance defines his existence. But balance built on secrets cannot last forever. The deeper he delves, the harder it becomes to separate knowledge from corruption. Among his many dealings, the ones with death reveal the depth of his courage and the scale of his sacrifice. Most mortals approach death with fear or reverence. Peppermint Butler treats him as a colleague. Their exchanges are transactional, polite, and strangely respectful. He understands the rules of that domain so well that even death acknowledges him as an equal participant. Yet such familiarity comes with a toll. To converse with death, one must first let part of the self die. Over time, Peppermint Butler's emotions flatten. His compassion becomes precise rather than warm. His humour carries an unsettling calm. He begins to resemble the entities he negotiates with, detached but purposeful. His friendship with Princess Bubblegum remains a tether to the world of the living. It is this bond that prevents his transformation into something truly monstrous. Despite his immersion in dark arts, his loyalty never wavers. When Bubblegum commands, he listens. When she doubts, he comforts. Their relationship is complex, neither entirely hierarchical nor equal. He admires her intellect and shares her pragmatism, yet he operates in moral territory she refuses to touch. He becomes the necessary shadow behind her light. Theirs is a partnership built on silent understanding. She shapes the future, and he ensures it survives the present. But even loyalty cannot protect him from consequence. The Candy Kingdom's peace depends on ignorance. The more he learns, the more he becomes incompatible with the world he serves. He begins to exist between realities, too dark for his kingdom, too gentle for the abyss. His dual existence isolates him, not because of guilt, but because of comprehension. He understands too much. Knowledge has made him patient, but it has also made him alone. Over time, his awareness of cosmic truth transforms into quiet melancholy. He sees that Oo's structure is fragile, that the powers guiding it are chaotic, and that even Princess Bubblegum's control is temporary. He realizes that no amount of wisdom can fix what is inherently unstable. Yet he continues to learn, not to prevent collapse, but to soften it. His knowledge becomes an act of compassion. He knows that the end will come for all things, and still, he chooses to stand guard until it does. This acceptance defines the later phase of his life. When the Great Gum War reshapes Ooh, Peppermint Butler's knowledge becomes both curse and salvation. His understanding of magic helps preserve life in the chaos, but it also exposes him to destruction. The aftermath leaves him reborn, his body remade and his mind fragmented. The wisdom he spent centuries acquiring vanishes, replaced by the innocence he lost long ago. His new life begins without the burden of memory, yet traces of his old self linger like faint echoes. As Pep But, he approaches knowledge with a different spirit. The hunger that once drove him now manifests as curiosity. He studies magic, not for control, but for understanding. His new teachers in Wizard City sense both potential and danger within him. They see flashes of something ancient in his eyes, remnants of the old sorcerer that once held Death's attention. Yet this time, Peppermint Butler does not rush toward mastery. He listens, learns, and questions. He feels the same pull toward forbidden magic, but he also recognizes the consequences that come with it. His growth lies not in rejecting darkness, but in choosing when to approach it. This approach marks his moral evolution. The old Peppermint Butler believed that knowledge justified any cost. The young one learns that knowledge without compassion leads to isolation. He begins to rebuild the balance that once defined him, but now from within rather than through control. He learns humility, not through punishment, but through perspective. Each spell he studies reminds him that power is meaningless without purpose. Each failure teaches him that the price of wisdom is patience. His redemption emerges through this new relationship to learning. When confronted with the temptation to reclaim his former strength, he hesitates. He feels the shadow of his past whispering, offering shortcuts to power, yet he resists. He no longer seeks to protect the world through control, but through understanding. This choice is what ultimately restores his soul. The Peppermint Butler who once bargained with demons now teaches others how to approach magic with caution. His classroom becomes a sanctuary where knowledge is shared freely, not hoarded in secret. In these moments, the true price of knowledge becomes clear. It was never his corruption or his loneliness. It was the understanding that wisdom itself cannot save anyone. Knowledge can illuminate, but it cannot heal. It can explain the world, but it cannot stop it from breaking. Peppermint Butler's life demonstrates that awareness of truth does not bring peace, it brings acceptance. The more he knows, the more he realizes that balance is not something to be maintained, but something to be lived. His transformation is subtle, yet complete. The older Peppermint Butler used knowledge as a weapon. The younger uses it as guidance. Both versions are true, but together they form the complete shape of his legacy. His story teaches that knowledge without morality becomes emptiness, and morality without knowledge becomes blindness. Only by enduring the pain of both can one find meaning. By the time his arc concludes, Peppermint Butler stands as a scholar who has made peace with the unknown. He no longer seeks to dominate it. He respects the boundaries between wisdom and mystery. His eyes still reflect the weight of what he once knew, but his smile carries the calm of someone who has accepted the limits of understanding. The servant who once walked beside death now walks among students, content with the idea that knowing less may sometimes mean living more. In the intricate order of the Candy Kingdom, Princess Bubblegum stands as its heart and mind, but behind that composure lies a shadow that moves quietly, ensuring her rule remains unshaken. That shadow is Peppermint Butler. He is the hand that performs what she cannot, the presence that absorbs what must never stain her image. Their bond is one of deep trust, but also one of silent complicity. Every kingdom needs a secret to survive, and Peppermint Butler becomes that secret incarnate. His existence within the royal hierarchy is one of calculated invisibility. To the citizens, he is a loyal attendant, an accessory to the throne, polite and harmless. He carries out his duties with grace and precision, never drawing attention. But this facade conceals a truth that even many close to Bubblegum do not know. That Peppermint Butler's reach extends beyond the palace walls and into the underworlds of Ooh. He is the broker of information, the keeper of hidden alliances, the one who ensures that threats are dealt with long before they reach the gates. This quiet power shapes the Candy Kingdom's survival. Bubblegum may lead through intellect, but her rule depends on stability, and stability requires control over what cannot be seen. Peppermint Butler manages this balance. He does not command armies or issue decrees, but his influence touches every layer of the realm. When a danger arises, he already knows. When an enemy plots, he has already listened. His methods are rarely visible, but his results are undeniable. The nature of his loyalty is what makes him indispensable. Unlike the guards or the Gumball Guardians, who serve through command, Peppermint Butler's service is rooted in choice. He obeys Bubblegum not out of fear or obligation, but out of faith. He understands her vision and believes in her ability to preserve Oo's fragile harmony. Yet his understanding of morality differs from hers. Where she draws lines, he steps beyond them. He acts where she hesitates. He becomes the tool she never publicly acknowledges needing. There are moments when this partnership teeters on dangerous ground. Peppermint Butler's power grows quietly as his knowledge deepens. He knows the weaknesses of every kingdom, the hidden histories of ancient entities, the true cost of magic. He carries the kind of wisdom that could overthrow empires if ever turned against them, but he never does. His restraint is what defines his character. He does not crave authority, he values function. The throne requires a ruler who can remain clean, and he accepts the burden of what must remain unclean. Their relationship is built on unspoken rules. Bubblegum trusts him without demanding explanations. He, in turn, never forces her to acknowledge what he does. There is a rhythm to their silence. When she plans new inventions or political alliances, he ensures nothing from the dark world interferes. When her experiments cross moral lines, he never questions. Each sustains the other, forming an unbroken chain of intellect and secrecy. In many ways, they are reflections of the same truth. Progress demands compromise. His loyalty, however, is not blind. Peppermint Butler sees Bubblegum's flaws with absolute clarity. He knows that her logic often eclipses empathy, that her quest for order sometimes sacrifices kindness. Yet this awareness does not diminish his devotion. Instead, it strengthens it. He understands that her imperfections make her human, and that his role is to bear the parts of her burden she cannot confront. The throne must remain upright, and he supports it from the shadows. This dynamic becomes most evident in moments of crisis. When enemies rise against the Candy Kingdom, Peppermint Butler's involvement is never seen but always felt. He arranges protection spells that guard the city from unseen curses. He consults with entities from beyond time to anticipate threats. He negotiates with forces that Bubblegum would rather pretend do not exist. His diplomacy operates in silence. Even the darkest beings treat him with caution, aware that his name carries the weight of the royal court and the underworld alike. Peppermint Butler's double existence is not merely practical, it is emotional. To serve two masters, light and dark, is to live in a constant state of tension. His identity is a bridge between purity and corruption. The Candy Kingdom demands innocence. The shadows demand knowledge. He moves between them with careful poise, aware that too much exposure to either could destroy him. His politeness, his humour, and his calm are not personality traits alone, but defence mechanisms. They are the tools he uses to maintain equilibrium within a fractured soul. The loneliness of that position is profound. Despite being surrounded by others, he belongs to no one. The Candy citizens view him as a servant, not an equal. The creatures of darkness respect him, but never trust him fully. Bubblegum relies on him, but cannot share his burden. He exists in permanent solitude, the one who knows everything, but cannot speak of it. His smiles conceal exhaustion. His loyalty, though unwavering, carries the weight of quiet suffering. Over time, this strain begins to shape how he perceives morality itself. He stops dividing the world into good and evil. To him, morality becomes a matter of necessity. Actions are neither right nor wrong. They are effective or ineffective. This view, though efficient, isolates him even further. He becomes the conscience that no longer believes in purity. Yet within this cynicism lies a strange form of hope. Peppermint Butler believes that by accepting corruption, he prevents others from having to experience it. His moral decay becomes an act of service. The throne itself becomes a metaphor for his existence. Bubblegum sits upon it as the symbol of order, while he stands behind it as the weight that keeps it steady. Without his shadow, her light would be too blinding to sustain. He ensures that her rule endures not through loyalty alone, but through action that defies the simplicity of her laws. He manipulates when he must, lies when necessary, and sacrifices reputation for stability. To the outside world, his deeds might seem sinister, but within Oo's fragile ecosystem, they are vital. His secrecy extends even to those who fight beside him. Finn, Jake, and Marceline rarely see him involved in their adventures, yet his presence influences many outcomes. He monitors, guides, and corrects from afar. He is the quiet strategist who ensures the balance of forces remains intact. The fact that he does so without credit or acknowledgement only reinforces his role as the shadow behind every victory. He does not seek recognition because visibility would destroy the illusion of innocence that the Candy Kingdom depends upon. Despite the burden, Peppermint Butler never expresses resentment. His understanding of purpose is absolute. He knows that the throne demands sacrifice from those who serve it. His own identity becomes the sacrifice. Every spell, every secret pact, every whispered incantation is part of the structure that keeps the kingdom safe. When Bubblegum's creations malfunction, or her moral calculations falter, he steps in quietly to restore balance. He does not challenge her authority, he completes it. Yet, beneath that loyalty, a quiet tragedy lingers. The very kingdom he sustains will never understand him. The Candy People, content in their innocence, would fear him if they knew the truth. Even Bubblegum, who owes him more than she will ever admit, cannot fully grasp the price he has paid. Peppermint Butler carries centuries of sin and knowledge so that others may remain untainted. His existence is proof that peace often rests upon the suffering of those who remain unseen. When the Great Gum War arrives, his hidden influence becomes clear once more. He operates from the background, managing forces that extend beyond mortal understanding. His actions do not appear in open battle, yet the resolution of the conflict bears his fingerprints. Afterward, when the world reshapes itself, he too is remade. His transformation into a younger form erases the shadow he once carried, leaving behind only faint echoes of what he endured. The shadow behind the throne disappears, replaced by a child who no longer remembers the burdens that once defined him. In that erasure lies the silent closure of his greatest service. The kingdom moves forward cleansed of its secrets, its ruler free from the need for a dark counterpart. Peppermint Butler's old self becomes a memory, not through death, but through renewal. He pays the final price for his loyalty by losing the identity that once gave him purpose. His shadow no longer follows the throne, yet the peace it ensured endures. The young Peppermint Butler, unaware of the magnitude of his sacrifice, carries only an instinctive curiosity for magic and morality. Though he does not remember his old allegiance, he embodies its lessons. The balance between darkness and duty lives on in him as quiet intuition. His redemption is not found in glory, but in continuity. The idea that even if the shadow forgets its purpose, the light it guarded still shines. Peppermint Butler's life is shaped by two identities that coexist but rarely align. As a servant, he embodies obedience, composure, and restraint. As a sorcerer, he represents curiosity, rebellion, and control. These roles conflict constantly, yet he never chooses between them. He believes they can serve the same purpose. To him, service and sorcery are not opposites, but two expressions of dedication, the first toward people, the second toward truth. His strength lies in navigating both without allowing either to consume him completely. As a servant, Peppermint Butler is the model of discipline. Every movement is deliberate, every word carefully measured. He listens more than he speaks and anticipates needs before they are voiced. His demeanor gives the impression of absolute simplicity, yet this simplicity is crafted with precision. He knows how to blend into silence, how to vanish behind routine. This skill is not submission, but camouflage. His obedience allows him to move unnoticed through halls of power and undercurrents of danger. The Candy Kingdom thrives on appearances, and he understands that perception is a kind of protection. This calculated humility hides the reality of his second life. When night falls, or the palace quiets, the same Peppermint who bows at the throne becomes something far more dangerous. The sorcerer awakens. He trades etiquette for invocation, serving trays for ritual circles. Beneath his polite exterior lies a mind that has touched the edges of existence. He can read runes older than U itself, channel energies from forgotten planes, and call upon death as an ally. Every spell he learns deepens his mastery, but also his solitude. Knowledge, in his world, is both shield and curse. The contradiction between his two roles is not hypocrisy, it is survival. The Candy Kingdom is fragile, filled with beings who could crumble under the weight of what he knows. He protects their innocence by masking his own corruption. The act of serving keeps his darker instincts in check, while sorcery grants him the means to ensure the safety of those who would never understand him. This equilibrium defines his existence. He cannot abandon either side without losing himself. Princess Bubblegum, whether consciously or not, cultivates this duality in him. Her leadership depends on control, and control requires both visible order and hidden enforcement. She builds the kingdom's moral structure, while Peppermint Butler maintains its unseen defences. Their relationship becomes a mirror of function. She represents reason. He represents consequence. When she builds, he guards. When she questions, he answers. His servitude gives her stability. His sorcery gives her protection. Together they form a closed system, each dependent on the other's restraint. Yet that restraint is constantly tested. The more Peppermint Butler learns, the harder it becomes to remain only a servant. Knowledge has its own gravity. The secrets he carries tempt him to act beyond his role. There are times when he interferes without permission, correcting the course of events that he believes could endanger the kingdom. He manipulates quietly, never from ambition, but from conviction that his foresight is necessary. His magic allows him to act where words would fail, but each interference pulls him further from the simple comfort of obedience. His sorcery does not stem from natural talent, but from obsession. Peppermint Butler was never meant to wield magic at this scale. His body and soul were shaped for servitude, not for channeling cosmic forces. The strain of practicing dark arts leaves traces. His peppermint form bears faint distortions, tiny cracks invisible to most but known to him. These marks are reminders of the toll his studies have taken. Each spell consumes a fraction of his essence. Over centuries, the cost accumulates. Yet he continues, accepting that erosion as part of the duty he chose. What sets him apart from other sorcerers is his discipline. Most who study forbidden magic succumb to arrogance or madness. Peppermint Butler remains grounded in structure. He never indulges in chaos for pleasure. His rituals follow method. His experiments follow ethics shaped by purpose. This self-imposed order keeps his darkness from spreading. He does not worship power. He harnesses it. In this balance, he becomes something unique, neither fully magician nor servant, but an intersection of both. Still, he knows that every act of magic leaves a residue. The spirits he contacts remember him. The demons he bargains with wait for their debts to be called. Even death, who once treated him with cordial respect, watches him with curiosity. To live between obedience and control is to walk on a blade. He cannot serve one world without angering the other, but he accepts that danger as part of his identity. The risk itself defines his value. There are moments when this balance falters. When the Candy Kingdom faces threats from beyond comprehension, Peppermint Butler acts with a precision that borders on ruthlessness. He does what must be done, regardless of consequence. He has summoned forces from beyond to fight for U, and though the show never details every instance, the results speak for themselves. The peace that follows such events is often uneasy, but it endures. Bubblegum's reign survives because he is willing to bear the moral burden she cannot. Over time, he begins to question whether service and sorcery can truly coexist. His loyalty to Bubblegum and the kingdom keeps him grounded, but the knowledge he holds isolates him from both. When he looks at the Candy citizens, he sees creatures incapable of grasping the world's depth. When he looks at the entities of darkness, he sees beings devoid of empathy. He exists between innocence and corruption, never fully belonging to either. This realization fills him with quiet melancholy. His greatest strength, his dual nature, is also his prison. His fall after the Great Gum War marks the culmination of this tension. The conflict pushes his abilities and loyalty to their limits. The magic he uses during that time is powerful enough to alter the fabric of U, but it also destroys the equilibrium that held him together. When he is reborn as Pep But, it is not just a loss of memory, but a collapse of identity. The servant and the sorcerer die together, replaced by a child who carries only the echo of both. The new Peppermint Butler is a clean slate, yet traces of the old balance remain buried within him. He is drawn instinctively to magic, curious and unafraid, but without the heaviness of secrecy. In Wizard City, this curiosity is both gift and danger. His classmates see a naive candy boy with an unusual fascination for dark subjects. What they do not realize is that he is reliving a pattern older than his new life, once again walking the line between innocence and corruption. The cycle begins to repeat, though this time with awareness growing slower and gentler. The young Peppermint Butler's training redefines the meaning of servitude. No longer a butler to a monarch, he becomes a servant to knowledge itself. He learns humility through trial and humiliation, facing the consequences of arrogance that belong to someone he no longer remembers. Each failure teaches restraint. Each discovery rekindles fragments of the wisdom his soul once held. Slowly, he rebuilds the balance his former self mastered through pain. The difference now lies in intent. He studies not to protect through secrecy, but to heal through understanding. His journey reveals that servitude and sorcery were never meant to oppose each other. They are complementary forces when guided by conscience. The older Peppermint Butler served power. The younger serves wisdom. In both cases, his devotion defines him, but his later self learns that loyalty without self-awareness leads to bondage, while knowledge without empathy leads to ruin. By combining both, he approaches something closer to peace. This synthesis becomes the essence of his redemption. Peppermint Butler does not reject either part of himself. The servant remains within him, teaching patience and duty. The sorcerer endures, reminding him of the value of courage and curiosity. When he teaches younger magic users, he does so with both qualities intertwined. His lessons are calm, his tone patient, his warnings clear. He tells them that every spell is a form of service, to the self, to the world, or to others, and that choosing whom one serves defines one's fate. Through his evolution, Peppermint Butler demonstrates that the truest mastery is not of magic, but of balance. The servant learns humility, the sorcerer learns restraint, and together they form harmony. His legacy is not power, but poise, the ability to hold darkness and light in the same hand without letting either consume the other. By accepting both identities fully, he transforms what once was contradiction into completeness. Every magician in U learns that to draw a circle is to make a promise. It defines the boundary between control and chaos, between what is summoned and what must remain unseen. For Peppermint Butler, the circle is not just a magical symbol, it is the shape of his life. Everything he does, from service to sorcery, follows a cycle of loyalty, secrecy, and consequence. His story moves in circles, each one wider and darker than the last, each returning him to the same lesson. Power cannot exist without sacrifice. Long before the Candy Kingdom recognized him as anything more than a servant, Peppermint Butler began his studies in secrecy. He found fragments of grimoires hidden in the ruins that dotted U, texts written in languages that twisted reality when spoken aloud. In those pages he saw reflections of his own mind, precise, meticulous, patient. He approached the dark arts with the discipline of a butler preparing a meal. His method was careful, his intent pure, but the knowledge itself was corruptive. He learned that power does not appear in explosions or curses, but in whispers that promise understanding. The first circle he drew was one of curiosity. He wanted to know how things worked beneath the surface, what kept U's fragile peace intact. He discovered that beneath the world's candy-coloured exterior lay layers of older magic, residual forces, from the eras before Bubblegum's rule, still pulsing beneath the soil. These ancient energies could not be destroyed, only redirected. To manipulate them, one had to form a pact, a circle of mutual recognition between mortal and cosmic. Peppermint Butler learned to draw these circles perfectly, understanding that one misplaced symbol could tear the veil between life and death. Over time, his curiosity evolved into responsibility. The second circle he drew was one of duty. When threats rose against Bubblegum's kingdom, he used his knowledge not for personal gain, but to maintain balance. He invoked entities that could bend time, harness spells that rewove matter, and summoned allies that existed only in half-light. None of these acts were visible to the public, yet they shaped U's stability. Each successful spell protected the kingdom, but each one also deepened his connection to the shadows. The more he served, the more the darkness recognized him as its own. Within the hidden circles he crafted, he began to meet the entities that ruled the unseen world. Death, the ancient sleepers, the spirits that lingered in the spaces between dimensions, all acknowledged Peppermint Butler as a being of consequence. He was not like other mortals who begged for favours. He negotiated. He understood the etiquette of eternity. In these dealings, he remained courteous, never arrogant. Even as he spoke to beings that devoured souls, he addressed them with the calm of a servant asking for tea. His politeness disarmed them. His intellect intrigued them. Through courtesy, he survived the company of powers, monsters. Yet every negotiation carried a price, and those prices accumulated silently. The shadows do not forget debts. Peppermint Butler owed them more than he could count. Some took fragments of his energy, others marked his name into their own domains. A few simply waited, watching, knowing that one day his control might falter. Still, he continued. His loyalty to Bubblegum outweighed fear. He saw himself as a barrier between her and the abyss, and he would rather be devoured by darkness than let it reach her. As his power grew, so did his awareness of its danger. He realized that magic, like loyalty, can only serve if kept in balance. Too much devotion to one ideal can consume the self entirely. The Candy Kingdom's order depended on repression, on hiding its imperfections beneath sweetness. Peppermint Butler's order depended on containment, on preventing his magic from spreading beyond its intended reach. Both systems relied on the same principle: control through denial. The circle, both literal and metaphorical, became the symbol of his existence. The third circle he drew was one of isolation. His secret life created distance between him and those around him. He could not share his work with the Candy People, who feared even the word necromancy. He could not speak openly with Bubblegum, whose morality forbade acknowledgement of his darker deeds. His knowledge made him indispensable, yet also untouchable. Every time he saved the kingdom, he buried another piece of himself beneath silence. He became both protector and prisoner. This isolation transformed him. He began to see Oo as a system of overlapping circles, each one representing a balance of forces, good and evil, life and death, creation and decay. His mind mapped them constantly. He saw where the lines intersected, where they blurred. This understanding granted him clarity, but also despair. He realized that no circle could last forever. Eventually, every boundary breaks, every promise falters. The very act of maintaining balance requires that imbalance exist somewhere else. For every life preserved, another fades. For every kingdom saved, another falls. This was the truth his magic revealed. Perfection is unsustainable. Despite this knowledge, he never turned away. His faith in purpose remained unbroken. He accepted that the world's imperfections required constant maintenance, and he dedicated himself to that task. His rituals became quieter, his manner calmer. When he performed his spells, it was without flourish or pride. He treated magic as duty, not spectacle. Every circle he drew was an act of care, a way to mend the cracks others could not see. Then came the final circle, the one that changed everything. During the Great Gum War, Peppermint Butler faced forces beyond any mortal comprehension. The conflict unleashed powers that blurred the boundary between magic and madness. He drew one last circle to contain them, combining every spell he had ever learned, every secret he had ever kept. It worked, but the cost was absolute. His body and soul could not endure the strain. The circle held, but it shattered him in the process. When the world was remade, he was reborn without memory, his power scattered like fragments of a broken seal. As the younger Pep But in Wizard City, he unconsciously begins to draw circles again. He sketches them in the dirt, carves them into parchment, traces them in the air when thinking. These gestures come from instinct rather than memory. The old knowledge lives within him, sleeping but never gone. His teachers see his talent and caution him against rushing ahead, unaware that he once stood among the greatest magicians alive. The circle now represents curiosity rather than control. What was once a prison becomes a path. Through his studies, Pep But begins to sense faint echoes of his past life's pacts. Whispers from old allies reach him, in dreams. The darkness that once recognized him still remembers his name. Yet, instead of fearing it, he acknowledges it with calm respect. He does not reject the shadows that once consumed him. He redefines his relationship with them. For the first time, he draws circles not to contain, but to understand. He learns that boundaries are not walls, but tools for focus. The same circle that once trapped him now centers him. His redemption takes the form of teaching. When he eventually becomes a mentor, he shows younger wizards how to honor the circle's meaning. He teaches them that every spell must begin with humility and end with reflection. He explains that the true purpose of magic is not control but awareness. Power exists to reveal, not to dominate. His lessons mirror his life. The servant who once hid his darkness becomes the guide who brings others into light. The circle remains his symbol until the end. It represents the completeness of his journey, the curiosity that began it, the duty that defined it, the isolation that tested it, and the understanding that resolved it. Through that symbol, Peppermint Butler's life comes full turn. He began by summoning power to serve another's dream and ends by using wisdom to serve his own. His story is not about defeating darkness, but living with it, recognizing that even shadows can be part of balance when treated with respect. Peppermint Butler's legacy, like the circle, endures quietly. The Candy Kingdom continues, without him at its center, unaware of how many times his unseen hands held its fate together. The spirits he once bargained with still whisper his name with a mixture of fear and reverence. The students he teaches carry his lessons into a new age of magic, an age where power is guided by patience, where light and dark coexist without war. He becomes more than a character. He becomes a principle, a living reminder that the deepest truths of Ooo are not in its battles, but in the stillness between them. The Candy Kingdom shines brighter than any place in Ooo. Its towers glisten in soft pastels, its streets smell of sweetness, and its people live in a constant state of cheerful simplicity. Yet beneath that polished surface lies a world sustained by secrecy. Every smiling face hides a system that depends on control, and at the heart of that hidden structure stands Peppermint Butler. His life has always been defined by the gap between appearance and reality. Where others see perfection, he sees the cracks that must be sealed to keep the illusion intact. The Candy Kingdom is more than a nation of sugar. It is a scientific creation, a product of Princess Bubblegum's intellect. She built it from her own biomass, moulding life from candy as a way to preserve order in a chaotic world. This origin gives the kingdom both brilliance and fragility. It exists in a delicate equilibrium, where one act of truth could unravel everything. The citizens know little of their own genesis, and Bubblegum intends to keep it that way. Peppermint Butler understands this necessity better than anyone. His duty is not just to protect the kingdom from external threats, but also to shield it from internal awareness. He sees what others refuse to see. The Candy People are not built to confront fear or complexity. Their bodies crumble under stress, their minds collapse under doubt. To maintain peace, they must remain blissfully ignorant. Peppermint Butler's role becomes one of constant management, redirecting danger, hiding evidence, silencing knowledge that could disrupt the illusion of safety. Every smile in the kingdom is a result of his unseen labour. Every moment of calm exists because he has already absorbed the chaos before it reached them. He does not resent this task. To him, ignorance is not cruelty, it is mercy. The truth he guards would destroy those who cannot bear its weight. His relationship with the shadows is not an indulgence, but a responsibility. He knows the rules of the underworld, the limitations of magic, and the fragility of creation itself. He understands that every force that sustains U has a counterpart waiting to consume it. His study of darkness becomes a way to understand light. This awareness gives him a perspective no one else in the kingdom shares. He knows that Bubblegum's vision of control is an incomplete shield. Her scientific precision cannot account for the metaphysical forces that ripple beneath U's surface. Logic cannot contain entropy, and morality cannot negotiate with oblivion. That is where Peppermint Butler steps in. He handles what cannot be measured, making him the unseen partner to her rational governance. Together, they form the true structure of the Candy Kingdom. Intellect and instinct, science and sorcery, logic and secrecy. Over centuries, he perfects the art of maintaining illusion. He designs systems of quiet intervention, employing charms that erase memory, sigils that suppress fear, and enchantments that reinforce joy. These spells are subtle, woven into the very air of the kingdom. When citizens feel a sudden wave of calm during crisis, it is not coincidence, it is Peppermint Butler's influence. He ensures that panic never reaches critical mass. His sorcery works alongside Bubblegum's science to sustain a realm that appears peaceful but is built on fragile deceit. This duality is not unique to him, it mirrors the entire nature of U. The land itself is a paradox, a place of wonder born from apocalypse, beauty grown from ruin. Peppermint Butler recognizes that the Candy Kingdom's perfection is another form of mutation, a mask worn by survival. He accepts it without judgment. To him, the worth of an illusion lies in the stability it provides, not in its honesty. The Candy People do not need to know they are artificial. They only need to believe in their happiness. His work preserves that belief. Yet beneath his calm exterior, guilt lingers. There are moments when he questions whether his silence perpetuates dependence. The Candy citizens rely on protection so completely that they never grow beyond it. Their innocence becomes immaturity. Their safety becomes blindness. He wonders if keeping them sheltered denies them the ability to face truth. But he also knows that exposure to truth would break them. The paradox torments him, yet he never stops. He accepts moral discomfort as the price of preservation. His actions sometimes blur the line between guardian and manipulator. He intervenes in events that Bubblegum herself is unaware of. He redirects threats not only to protect her rule, but to preserve the kingdom's emotional balance. There are records of him contacting dark forces to prevent disasters, offering parts of himself in exchange for calm weather, stable crops, or suppressed plagues of corruption. These sacrifices are never publicized. The Candy People celebrate festivals, unaware that the reason they are safe is because their butler spent the night bargaining with something ancient and unspeakable. The secrecy surrounding his actions extends even to Bubblegum. He tells her only what she needs to know. Their relationship thrives on mutual omission. She conceals the full extent of her scientific manipulations, and he hides the true scope of his magical dealings. They trust each other precisely because they do not demand total transparency. The Candy Kingdom depends on their shared understanding that truth must be rationed. As the years pass, Peppermint Butler becomes a living archive of hidden truths. He remembers every danger averted, every secret erased. His mind carries the weight of histories that no longer exist. He has witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, the bending of time, the fading of gods. Yet he continues to serve tea, smiling as though nothing has changed. His composure is both armor and performance. It keeps the kingdom comfortable and keeps his memories from spilling into his face. This burden shapes his identity. He is not merely a servant, he is a vessel of collective denial. His knowledge isolates him, but it also grants him purpose. In a world built on repression, he becomes the conscience that knows everything, yet demands nothing. The shadows beneath the sugar are his domain, and he tends to them with devotion. Every secret he keeps becomes another layer of protection for those who cannot handle the truth. After his transformation into the younger Pep But, these layers of memory vanish, but their influence lingers subconsciously. Even without his past knowledge, he retains the instinct to maintain harmony through concealment. When tension arises among students in Wizard City, he diffuses it naturally. When forbidden subjects appear, he listens rather than condemns. His calmness mirrors his former self's quiet authority, but now it is paired with genuine innocence. The child he has become no longer bears the burden of secrecy. Instead, he learns the value of openness. Through him, the Candy Kingdom's hidden heart begins to heal symbolically. This transition carries profound meaning. The old Peppermint Butler preserved peace through concealment. The new one learns to preserve it through understanding. The shadows beneath the sugar remain, but their nature changes. They are no longer prisons for forbidden truths, but repositories of experience waiting to be shared. By teaching others, Pep But transforms secrecy into wisdom. He ensures that the next generation of magic users can face the truth without fear. The cycle of concealment ends with him. The illusions that once sustained the Candy Kingdom evolve into awareness. His legacy teaches that peace built on ignorance cannot last forever, but peace built on knowledge can endure. The kingdom may still glitter, its citizens may still smile, but somewhere beneath that sweetness lies a quiet resilience, a reflection of the butler who once protected them without ever asking to be seen. Peppermint Butler's story, Beneath the Surface of Ooh, is a study of hidden virtue. He is not heroic in the traditional sense, yet his actions sustain life in ways that heroism never could. The secrets beneath the sugar are not lies meant to deceive, but truths too heavy to carry in the open. His greatest contribution is not what he reveals, but what he chooses to keep veiled until others are ready. Power in Ooh rarely arrives as thunder or flame. It creeps, tempts, and whispers. It does not always shout its presence. Sometimes it tastes sweet. For Peppermint Butler, that sweetness is both literal and symbolic. His body, made of candy, embodies the paradox of temptation. Everything about him appears harmless, yet within that soft exterior lies one of the most dangerous concentrations of magical potential in the land of Ooh. His relationship with power is not about corruption or conquest. It is about appetite, how far one can go in pursuit of knowledge before consumption turns inward. From the beginning, Peppermint Butler's interest in power differs from that of most magic users. Others seek spells for dominance or recognition. He seeks them for necessity. The Candy Kingdom, ruled by science and reason, leaves little space for the mystical. Yet beneath its polished order, there are threats that logic cannot explain. Peppermint Butler understands this better than anyone. His desire to learn magic is born not from rebellion, but from obligation. Someone must know how to fight the darkness that lurks beyond the edges of comprehension. That sense of duty becomes the seed of his hunger. The first taste of true power comes in silence. He learns how to alter the temperature of the air, to make a candle flame bend without wind, to sense when spirits pass unseen. Each success gives him a small thrill, a confirmation that he can touch forces larger than himself. The sensation is intoxicating not because it gives him control, but because it gives him connection. Magic allows him to feel the pulse of Oo's living energy, the rhythm that ties everything together. It is the closest thing to communion he will ever experience. But as his abilities grow, so does the complexity of his conscience. Power is not neutral, it requires context. To wield it responsibly demands wisdom, and wisdom demands sacrifice. Every spell he learns reveals a new layer of risk. He discovers that magic is rarely clean. Every action carries an echo. Every summoning leaves residue. He realizes that power, even when used for good, always alters its wielder. The more he practices, the more he senses a subtle shift within himself, a thinning of moral boundaries replaced by precision and purpose. Peppermint Butler never seeks to rule, but he cannot deny the allure of capability. The ability to influence outcomes, to prevent disaster, to shape reality. These things seduce him quietly. He convinces himself that mastery is protection, that by learning more he can save more. This rationalization blurs into addiction. His nights grow longer, his rituals more complex, his dealings deeper. He bargains with forces that demand pieces of his soul, paying each price without hesitation. He learns to speak the language of shadows fluently, not as an outsider, but as a native tongue. The sweetness of power begins to sour, but by then he cannot stop. The consequences do not arrive as punishment, but as transformation. His manner becomes colder, his humour darker. The joy that once came from service turns into grim satisfaction. He does not notice the change at first. He only sees the efficiency it brings. When others panic, he remains calm. When danger rises, he acts without hesitation. The more detached he becomes, the better he performs his role. The kingdom remains safe, yet its safety is built upon his quiet disconnection. Power has not destroyed him, it has hollowed him. This hollowness becomes his greatest weapon. With emotions subdued, he can navigate situations others cannot. He can converse with death without trembling, stare into the void without flinching. He becomes a creature of composure, yet beneath that calm lies exhaustion. He begins to understand that the very power he sought to protect life has distanced him from it. His laughter feels rehearsed, his kindness mechanical. Only Princess Bubblegum seems to notice this subtle change, but she never intervenes. She recognizes in him the same cost she pays for control. Their silence about this shared burden becomes its own kind of bond. When Peppermint Butler reaches the height of his abilities, he discovers that the true taste of power is loneliness. No one can follow him where he has gone. The entities that once frightened him now treat him as equal, but equality among monsters is no comfort. He becomes respected, feared, but never understood. Even Bubblegum, the person he trusts most, cannot grasp the depth of what he has become. He hides this emptiness behind service, performing loyalty as if it were a ritual. The act sustains him, but it cannot fill the void. The Great Gum War exposes the limits of his mastery. All the knowledge and strength he gathered cannot stop destruction from unfolding. For all his preparation, he realizes that power cannot prevent chaos. It can only delay it. In that revelation lies the collapse of his old worldview. He understands that control is an illusion, that every act of preservation merely postpones inevitable change. The taste of power, once thrilling, now turns bitter. When the war ends and Oo is remade, the universe grants him release by stripping him of memory. The younger Pep But is born not as punishment, but as renewal. In his new life, power feels different. As a child, he approaches magic with curiosity, rather than hunger. He does not crave control, he seeks understanding. His studies are still intense, but they carry joy instead of compulsion. When he fails, he laughs. When he succeeds, he shares. This attitude confuses his teachers, who sense something ancient in him, but see only kindness. They do not realize that his soul has already consumed power's sweetness and learned its bitterness. What remains now is wisdom, subtle, instinctive, unspoken. Pep But's redemption lies in his restraint. The knowledge from his past life lingers like flavor on the tongue. He remembers, not in detail, but in intuition, that some spells should never be cast, some doors should remain closed. When tempted by shortcuts to strength, he declines. His refusal is quiet but firm, the result of experience his conscious mind cannot recall. The power that once ruled him now exists as discipline. He has learned that true mastery is not accumulation, but moderation. Over time, his role shifts from seeker to guide. He begins teaching others how to approach magic with respect. His lessons emphasize patience, awareness, and humility. He tells students that the sweetness of success often hides the bitterness of consequence, that real power is not in casting a spell, but in choosing when not to. His tone carries authority that belies his youthful form. In teaching restraint, he completes the circle of his journey. The hunger that once consumed him becomes nourishment for others. The Candy Kingdom's peace endures partly because of his unseen legacy. Though he no longer serves directly, his teachings ripple outward. His students spread the philosophy that magic must serve balance, not ambition. Through them, his influence persists quietly. Power, once his burden, becomes his gift to the future. The taste of it remains sweet, but now it is tempered by understanding, a flavour of harmony rather than temptation. The story of Peppermint Butler's power is the story of Ooh itself. Both began in innocence, both tasted corruption, both sought renewal through loss. His evolution mirrors the land's, from chaos to order, from control to acceptance. He shows that power, when guided by conscience, can be transformed into wisdom. It is not meant to dominate, but to illuminate. He embodies the lesson that strength without empathy is hollow, and that only through humility can true power be sustained. In the end, Peppermint Butler's taste of power becomes a metaphor for survival. He has consumed darkness, endured consequence, and emerged lighter for it. The flavour never leaves him, but he no longer hungers for it. He has learned to savour peace, even when it is fleeting. His final legacy is not a spell or a monument, but a principle that every sweetness in Ooh, every illusion of safety or joy, owes its existence to someone willing to bear the bitterness beneath it. Death is not an abstract idea in Ooh. It is a person, a presence that walks, speaks, and bargains. Few mortals ever meet him without losing something. Fewer still leave those encounters unchanged. Peppermint Butler belongs to the rarest category of all, the ones who meet death as an equal. His relationship with the embodiment of mortality is not built on fear, but on respect, curiosity, and necessity. Through their exchanges, Peppermint Butler learns truths that no book could ever teach, and the price he pays is measured not in years, but in fragments of his soul. The first time Peppermint Butler summons death, it is out of obligation, not ambition. The Candy Kingdom faces a danger beyond Bubblegum's reach, something that logic cannot dissect or contain. He realizes that survival requires understanding the forces that govern the end of all things. His ritual is flawless. The circle is drawn in sugar, dust, and bone powder, the air heavy with stillness. When death appears, he does not bring thunder or flame. He simply arrives, calm and inevitable. Peppermint Butler bows, not in fear, but in courtesy. What begins as a transaction evolves into dialogue. Death recognizes in Peppermint Butler a mind capable of comprehension. Most mortals beg or curse when faced with the end, but he speaks in reasoned tones. He asks questions about balance, about what sustains existence beyond magic and science. Death answers, amused by his composure. These early conversations mark the beginning of an unlikely mentorship. Peppermint Butler becomes one of the few living beings who can converse with the unseen mechanisms that guide life's cycle. Through death, he learns that endings are not punishments, they are maintenance. Everything in Oo survives through transformation. Destruction and creation are threads in the same weave. This understanding reshapes how he views his role in the Candy Kingdom. Instead of fighting decay, he begins to manage it. He realizes that death is not the enemy of order, but its silent partner. The Candy Kingdom's fragility mirrors the truth of the cosmos. Everything beautiful requires impermanence to exist. These lessons deepen his practice of magic. Where other sorcerers focus on summoning and control, Peppermint Butler learns the art of release. He understands when to let forces return to the void rather than binding them. He learns that true power lies not in prolonging life, but in honoring its cycle. His spells become quieter, cleaner, more purposeful. His demeanor changes too. Death's patience rubs off on him. He speaks slower, acts with deliberation, and begins to see time as something fluid rather than linear. Yet, such wisdom comes with cost. The more he speaks with death, the less human he feels. The boundaries between servant, sorcerer, and something other begin to blur. Death's realm touches him deeply, leaving traces of stillness in his aura. The Candy people sense it without understanding why. Some avoid his gaze, feeling a chill that has no physical source. He never corrects them. He understands that part of him no longer belongs entirely to the living. Despite the growing distance between himself and others, Peppermint Butler never abandons compassion. If anything, his encounters with death heighten it. Understanding mortality gives him empathy for all beings. He sees the fragility in every smile, the transience in every moment of peace. He becomes more careful with words, more generous with patience. His calmness, mistaken by others as detachment, is in truth reverence. He treats life as sacred precisely because he understands its brevity. His friendship with death also gives him access to knowledge beyond mortal reach. He learns of the layers between worlds, the path souls take when leaving Oo, the rules that even gods must obey. This insight makes him indispensable to Bubblegum's rule. When something unnatural threatens the kingdom, a curse, a resurrection, a tear in reality, he knows where to look for answers. Sometimes, death warns him of disturbances before they manifest. Their conversations become part of the unseen structure that sustains Oo. Not all exchanges between them are solemn. There is humour in their rapport. Death finds Peppermint Butler's form amusing. A tiny Candyman discussing cosmic lore with the Keeper of Souls. Peppermint Butler responds with dry wit, unbothered by irony. Their dialogue often drifts from metaphysics to casual talk about the absurdity of existence. These moments of levity humanize death and remind Peppermint Butler that even the eternal can find joy in smallness. Theirs is a friendship defined by equilibrium, one that blends the profound with the mundane. However, this relationship raises questions about loyalty. Serving life while befriending death places Peppermint Butler in constant conflict. There are times when he must choose between saving lives and preserving the balance that death enforces. He does not always make the moral choice, but he always makes the necessary one. When a life must end, he ensures it ends cleanly. When a soul refuses to depart, he guides it to rest. His allegiance is not to sentiment, but to harmony. The Great Gum War once again tests this balance. The destruction it brings threatens to unmake the cycles that death governs. Peppermint Butler fights not just for survival, but for preservation of order itself. He calls upon death for counsel, and their final conversation, as his old self, carries quiet gravity. Death warns him that meddling too far could cost his essence. Peppermint Butler accepts the risk, replying that some debts are worth the loss. His sacrifice during the war fulfills that prophecy. He does not die, but he loses continuity, the memory of his former existence. Death keeps his promise and lets him begin anew. When Pep But is born, death watches from afar. The relationship continues, though in altered form. The young candy boy feels an inexplicable pull toward the unknown, a sense of familiarity when thinking about mortality. In Wizard City, his fascination with dark magic stems partly from this buried connection. Though he no longer remembers their conversations, their essence lingers. When he speaks of balance, when he treats magic with patience, he channels echoes of death's wisdom. In one quiet moment near the end of Wizard City, Pep But feels a presence observing him. He cannot see who it is, but he smiles faintly. It is a wordless acknowledgement, a subtle gesture of continuity. Death has not claimed him, but neither has he abandoned him. Their friendship persists beyond memory, proving that bonds built on understanding transcend identity itself. Through these encounters, Peppermint Butler becomes the living bridge between life and death. He embodies coexistence rather than opposition. His magic honors the cycle instead of resisting it. By embracing mortality as part of existence, he achieves the rarest kind of peace, a calm rooted in acceptance. His conversations with death reveal the ultimate truth of his story. Knowledge is not about power, service is not about obedience, and death is not about loss. All three are forms of continuity, ways in which existence maintains its rhythm. Peppermint Butler's calm smile is the reflection of that truth. He has seen the end and found it gentle. In Ooh, where immortality and transformation often blur, his role remains unique. Others seek to escape death, but he learned to understand it. He does not fear the end, because he has conversed with it, argued with it, and finally befriended it. Death, in turn, respects him as one of the few mortals who treated him neither as a threat nor as a god, but as a colleague. Together, they remind Ooh that even in a world of candy and colour, darkness has its dignity, and endings have their grace. Peppermint Butler is a contradiction that should not exist. He is candy, soft and bright, yet he commands the darkest forces known in Ooh. To most, necromancy is synonymous with corruption, a practice that defies the sanctity of life. But in Peppermint Butler's hands, it becomes something else, an act of stewardship, not rebellion. His mastery of death is not driven by hunger for control or immortality. It is born from the understanding that life, left unguarded, unravels. He becomes Ooh's strangest kind of caretaker, a necromancer whose purpose is preservation. Necromancy in Ooh is a discipline of boundaries. It requires not only power, but also balance, because every command over death comes with a debt. The inexperienced lose themselves to the energies they invoke. The arrogant are consumed by the very spirits they summon. Peppermint Butler survives because he treats necromancy as dialogue, not domination. He does not enslave the dead, he negotiates with them. His rituals, polite conversations conducted through sigils and silence. The dead respond to respect more readily than to force, and he understands that courtesy is as essential to magic as incantation. He learns this craft through patience and experimentation. His early attempts begin with small gestures, communing with harmless spirits, reading echoes from discarded relics, tracing the boundaries between the living world and the other side. Each encounter teaches him that the line separating existence and oblivion is not firm but fluid. He realizes that necromancy is not about reversing death, it is about acknowledging its persistence. The dead do not disappear, they change states. To him, necromancy is the study of transformation. His ability to communicate with the deceased gives him access to knowledge forgotten by time. Ancient rulers, fallen heroes, and extinct species all speak to him when summoned. Through their stories, he pieces together the true history of Ooo, a history that even Princess Bubblegum's records cannot capture. He learns that magic and science were once the same language, that kingdoms rose and fell not through conquest but through imbalance. These revelations deepen his loyalty to Bubblegum, for he sees her as the last architect of stability in a world built on cycles of collapse. Necromancy, for him, becomes both a weapon and a warning. It allows him to prevent catastrophe by consulting the past, yet it also reminds him of how easily civilizations crumble. The dead do not lie, but their truths carry weight. They show him what happens when power grows unchecked, when curiosity eclipses morality. These lessons become part of his service. He uses what he learns to guide Bubblegum's rule indirectly, ensuring her scientific experiments never drift into the same hubris that destroyed the old world. His influence is quiet but profound, the hand of a necromancer guiding a kingdom of life. The Candy Kingdom never learns of these practices. To its citizens, death is a concept too heavy to contemplate. Their creator engineered them to be simple, their existence designed around stability and joy. Peppermint Butler shields them from the reality that beneath their sweetness lies the same entropy that claims every living thing. He becomes their invisible guardian, intercepting lost spirits that wander near the kingdom, redirecting them gently to their rest. Many nights, while the Candy People dream in safety, he stands beneath the stars murmuring to ghosts, keeping the peace between worlds. Yet his dealings with death are not without consequence. Each ritual drains a fragment of his essence. The energies he channels are too vast for any being made of sugar to contain. Over the centuries, the strain leaves marks upon him, subtle changes in hue, faint cracks that never heal, a tiredness behind the eyes that never fades. These are the signatures of necromantic labour, the toll exacted by constant communion with what lies beyond. He accepts them without complaint, viewing them as proof of purpose. Death, who once served as his mentor, remains his most trusted confidant. Their exchanges become routine, almost domestic in rhythm. Peppermint Butler does not summon death for spectacle. He visits him as one might visit a colleague. They discuss the flow of souls, the state of the underworld, the natural order of Oo's spirits. Death respects him for never demanding more than understanding. Peppermint Butler respects death for maintaining fairness in a universe of chaos. Their partnership blurs the line between mortal and metaphysical. Through this relationship, Peppermint Butler develops a philosophy that guides his later life. He comes to believe that necromancy is not about wielding darkness, but about maintaining equilibrium. Every act of life creates imbalance that must be corrected. Every soul that refuses to pass on distorts the flow. His work, then, is not defiance. It is maintenance. He sees himself as the quiet janitor of existence, cleaning up the unseen residue of creation. The title Candy Necromancer sounds like irony to others, but to him it captures the essence of duality, sweetness and decay coexisting in harmony. The dual nature of his craft mirrors the duality of his soul. He is both servant and sorcerer, life and death, sweetness and shadow. This coexistence grants him strength, but also loneliness. He can never share his work fully with anyone, not even Bubblegum. She knows what he does in theory, but the details remain unspoken. Their friendship thrives in mutual understanding of unspoken burdens. She governs through science, he through silence. Both know that the stability of the Candy Kingdom depends on their shared willingness to shoulder moral weight. When the Great Gum War arrives, necromancy becomes his final tool of preservation. As the world fractures, he calls upon spirits for guidance and protection. His mastery over death allows him to sense when reality itself begins to tear. He binds lost souls, calms restless energies, and stabilizes the chaos left in the wake of destruction. Each act weakens him further, but he endures until peace returns. By then, he has stretched his soul to its limit. The power that once obeyed him begins to erode the boundaries of his being. The universe grants him release through rebirth, transforming him into the younger Pep But, an echo stripped of weight. Pep But's relationship with necromancy is different. As a student in Wizard City, he feels curiosity toward dark magic, but not compulsion. He studies with an openness untainted by fear. His classmates see him as eccentric, perhaps even foolish, for treating forbidden subjects with calm acceptance. Yet beneath his innocence lies ancient instinct. He senses when to stop, when a ritual risks crossing moral boundaries. The balance his old self fought to maintain has become part of his nature. He practices understanding rather than control. In one of his studies, Pep, but accidentally opens a minor channel between worlds. Instead of panicking, he observes, a faint whisper drifts through, a fragment of his past life's voice, advising him to be kind. He listens, nods, and closes the portal gently. That act captures his transformation. The necromancer who once commanded the dead now treats them with compassion. The lesson of his lifetime repeats itself in a softer form. True mastery of death lies not in bending it, but in honouring it. Pep But's later years see him teaching others the same principles. He tells young wizards that every form of power must be treated like life itself, with care, patience, and reverence. He no longer hides his interest in necromancy, though he reframes it as philosophy rather than practice. Through him, the dark art loses its stigma. It becomes a way to understand existence, not to distort it. The Candy Necromancer becomes the Candy Sage, his legend evolving from one of fear to one of wisdom. In the end, Peppermint Butler's legacy as the Candy Necromancer is a paradox that defines Ooh itself. He is proof that darkness can serve light, that the study of death can protect life, and that even the sweetest soul can hold unimaginable depth. His story dissolves the boundary between morality and necessity. He does not conquer death, he converses with it, learns from it, and carries its lessons into eternity. When death finally comes for him, it is not as a reaper, but as an old friend. There is no fear, no resistance, only recognition. The Candy Necromancer has fulfilled his purpose. The balance holds. The circle closes. Loyalty defines Peppermint Butler more than magic ever could. It is the current that runs beneath every choice he makes, binding him to Princess Bubblegum, to the Candy Kingdom, and even to Ooh itself. Yet loyalty, for him, is not a matter of emotion. It is structure. It is the invisible framework that allows the world he protects to stand upright. His magic may bend the laws of reality, but his loyalty is what anchors him to purpose. That same devotion, however, is also the source of his greatest suffering. From his earliest days at Bubblegum's side, Peppermint Butler learns that service is both privilege and prison. To serve her means to serve her ideals, stability, control, perfection. These values form the pillars of the Candy Kingdom, and he adopts them as his own. He takes pride in his efficiency, his punctuality, his unshakable calm. Yet behind that poise is an awareness that his loyalty must go deeper than obedience. He must protect not only Bubblegum's rule, but also her image, her myth, the illusion that the kingdom's strength is pure. That requires secrecy, and secrecy demands sacrifice. He becomes a keeper of two loyalties, one public, one private. Publicly, he represents discipline and kindness, the perfect attendant. Privately, he navigates a web of moral contradictions. When threats arise, he acts in ways Bubblegum cannot afford to condone. When dangers emerge from within, he removes them quietly. His devotion to her vision compels him to commit acts she would never ask for, yet without them, her reign could not survive. This silent partnership blurs the line between service and autonomy. He follows her commands, but often before she gives them. Their relationship evolves into a delicate equilibrium. Bubblegum trusts him implicitly, even though she knows he keeps secrets from her. He respects her intellect, even as he surpasses her in certain forms of understanding. They are two halves of a single idea, the scientist and the sorcerer, logic and instinct. Both believe in order, both fear chaos. Yet each approaches control differently, she through creation, he through containment. Their dynamic is one of silent harmony, punctuated by moments of quiet tension. Loyalty, for Peppermint Butler, is not blind devotion, it is clarity. He sees Bubblegum's flaws as clearly as her virtues. He knows her tendency toward manipulation, her cold calculations, her willingness to sacrifice morality for the sake of progress. But instead of condemning these traits, he balances them. Where she edges toward ruthlessness, he tempers her through subtle interference. When she hesitates in sentiment, he provides precision. Their partnership is not built on equality, but on trust that both will do what the other cannot. That trust, however, carries immense weight. Peppermint Butler bears the moral residue of Bubblegum's rule. He takes responsibility for every secret sin that ensures her kingdom's survival. When experiments fail, he cleans up the consequences. When soldiers die in wars she initiated, he speaks with their ghosts. When her inventions threaten to spiral beyond control, he intervenes silently. His loyalty demands not just action, but emotional endurance, the ability to forgive her choices without absolving them. Over time, that endurance erodes his sense of self. He begins to question whether loyalty to a person can coexist with loyalty to truth. Bubblegum's logic leaves little room for spirituality, yet Peppermint Butler has seen things that defy logic entirely. He knows that beneath the layers of order she builds lies the chaotic heartbeat of existence. To her, control is survival. To him, acceptance is. Their philosophies diverge, but their bond remains. His loyalty becomes a balancing act between faith and reason. There are moments when this bond falters. When Bubblegum takes decisions that endanger innocence, he hesitates. When she chooses isolation over compassion, he wonders if his support enables her detachment. These doubts never blossom into rebellion, but they shape his tone, gentle corrections, subtle gestures, a silence that carries quiet disapproval. Bubblegum senses it and adjusts, though neither acknowledges it openly. Their friendship exists in a realm beyond words, held together by mutual understanding that imperfection is inevitable. Peppermint Butler's loyalty extends beyond Bubblegum to the kingdom itself. He sees the Candy Kingdom as a living organism, fragile and dependent on constant care. The citizens adore their princess, but it is the butler who truly sustains their peace. His magic wards off nightmares, his negotiations with unseen forces prevent disasters, his vigilance keeps them safe from truths they cannot bear. He serves them not because they deserve it, but because they need it in their simplicity. He finds purpose. That purpose becomes his anchor when the Great Gum War arrives. The world fractures under chaos, and Bubblegum's authority is challenged from every direction. Peppermint Butler never questions his place. He acts as her unseen strategist, consulting spirits, sealing rifts, manipulating outcomes from the shadows. He knows the cost of such intervention. It drains him, body and soul, but loyalty allows no hesitation. His service is absolute. When peace finally returns, it does so on the foundation of his unseen sacrifices. The aftermath of the war breaks the balance that once defined him. His rebirth, as the young Pep But represents, the release of a soul that has carried too much weight. The new version of himself remembers nothing of loyalty's burden, yet its imprint lingers. Even as a child, Pep But exhibits quiet helpfulness, eagerness to serve, and natural empathy. These traits are echoes of the devotion that once shaped him. But unlike his predecessor, he is free to question where loyalty ends and individuality begins. In Wizard City, this new Peppermint Butler begins to redefine loyalty altogether. He learns to serve not a ruler, but a principle, understanding. His dedication to study becomes his new allegiance. He discovers that devotion without self-awareness leads to dependency, and dependency is a softer form of bondage. By learning humility, he learns freedom. His loyalty shifts inward, becoming fidelity to growth rather than submission to power. Through this transformation, Peppermint Butler's story becomes a meditation on the ethics of service. Loyalty, he learns, cannot be pure. It always demands compromise, and compromise always leaves scars. The value lies not in avoiding those scars, but in carrying them with grace. His old self served others to preserve the world. His new self serves knowledge to preserve meaning. Both forms are necessary, but the latter brings peace. The weight of loyalty defines his legacy. In the end, it is not his sorcery or his intellect that holds Ooh together, but his willingness to shoulder responsibility that others cannot. His loyalty is not devotion to authority, it is devotion to continuity. He ensures that the kingdom endures through change, that Bubblegum's vision survives without consuming her, that the fragile happiness of the Candy People remains unbroken. He serves so that others may live without fear. When Pep But finally matures into wisdom, he inherits that same weight differently. He teaches others that loyalty must evolve. Service without reflection leads to blindness. Reflection without action leads to decay. True loyalty, he tells his students, means committing to something while still allowing it to change. His words echo the lesson of his entire existence. Love and duty are not chains, but circles. They return again and again, each time gentler, each time wiser. Peppermint Butler's life is proof that devotion, when rooted in understanding, can survive corruption. His loyalty begins as servitude, transforms into stewardship, and ends as mentorship. The Candy Kingdom may never know the extent of his sacrifices, but its peace stands as his testament. He carried the weight of loyalty so that others would never have to feel it. Every spell in Oo comes with a price, though few understand how heavy it can be. Magic, no matter how benevolent in intention, is an exchange. Something is always given for something else. Peppermint Butler learns this truth not from books or teachers, but through experience carved into his very being. He enters the world of magic, seeking knowledge for protection, yet every discovery extracts a part of him. Over time, he realizes that magic does not consume the foolish, it consumes the devoted. The first cost he pays is innocence. When he begins studying the arcane arts, he still believes that understanding darkness will allow him to control it. He imagines knowledge as a weapon to defend the Candy Kingdom, a shield against chaos. That belief shatters the first time he summons a spirit and hears it speak his name. It knows him before he knows it. In that moment, Peppermint Butler realizes that knowledge is not mastery, it is exposure. Every truth revealed also reveals him to the forces that dwell beyond sight. He learns that power never flows in one direction. As his skills expand, so does the price. The spells that guard the kingdom require vitality. The rituals that seal doorways between dimensions draw from the caster's soul. Peppermint Butler feels this depletion slowly, like a candle burning from the inside. The candy people around him never notice. His polite tone and soft demeanour remain unchanged. Only Death, who visits him occasionally, remarks on the quiet dimming of his energy. Peppermint Butler laughs it off, understanding that decline is part of the agreement he made the first time he lifted a wand. Magic in Oo is shaped by intention, and intention defines its consequence. For Peppermint Butler, intention is always rooted in service. He casts spells to protect, not to conquer. But protection requires repetition, and repetition deepens the connection between caster and current. Each time he draws on the same energy, it binds to him more tightly, claiming more of his essence. He becomes both the wielder and the conduit, carrying traces of every spell he has ever cast. His soul becomes a tapestry of residues, light, shadow, love, loss, all intertwined. The Candy Kingdom benefits from his sacrifices without ever knowing the cost. Every magical barrier that holds, every storm that passes quietly, every night that ends in peace owes something to him. He becomes a silent battery for the kingdom's survival, a living vessel of accumulated fatigue. The sweetness of his form contrasts with the exhaustion inside him. He hides it well, maintaining the cheerful professionalism expected of a butler. His endurance becomes invisible even to those who rely most on it. The longer he practices, the more he understands that magic reshapes identity. Each interaction with the supernatural alters perspective. The more he learns about how life and death interlock, the less he can think like a simple being of sugar and colour. His eyes begin to see layers of reality overlapping, the living, the spectral, the eternal. He hears echoes in silence, feels shifts in temperature, that signal the presence of forces others cannot perceive. What once was comfort becomes dissonance. The Candy Kingdom's brightness starts to feel too sharp, its joy too thin. He endures it, but it never feels the same. The psychological toll of magic weighs heavier than the physical. Peppermint Butler begins to dream differently. In his sleep, He wanders through empty halls where every door leads to an unfinished spell. He sees faces of spirits he helped cross over, smiling without mouths. He wakes without fear, but never rested. Over time, dreams and waking life blur. Magic refuses to stay confined to ritual. It seeps into thought. He realizes that true mastery means accepting that there will never again be separation between the natural and the unnatural. Still, he refuses to stop. The responsibility he feels outweighs exhaustion. Each act of magic strengthens the structure of U a little longer. He knows that without intervention, the world could easily unravel. To him, fatigue is not tragedy, it is duty fulfilled. Yet somewhere inside him, a quiet question grows. How much of himself will remain once duty ends? The hidden cost of magic also manifests in isolation. The deeper he delves, the fewer people he can relate to. Princess Bubblegum understands reason, but not ritual. Finn and Jake understand courage, but not consequence. Even Death, with all his patience, cannot feel what it means to be alive and eroding at the same time. Peppermint Butler lives in a realm between companionship and solitude. His politeness becomes his last line of defense, a ritual of civility that conceals the decay beneath. The Great Gum War accelerates his decline. The magnitude of spells he casts during that time pushes him past mortal thresholds. He channels powers that bend matter, halts collapsing timelines, and reweaves broken dimensions. Each act succeeds, but each leaves damage. His candy body cracks under the strain, and his mind stretches thin. When the war ends, he is alive but hollow. The universe, in mercy, resets him. His rebirth as Pep But becomes both restoration and erasure. The young Pep But inherits no memory of this pain, but he carries its lessons unconsciously. In Wizard City, he approaches magic with caution. Where his former self sought control, he seeks comprehension. When he feels temptation to overreach, something inside him resists, a reflex born from the scars of his past life. He does not understand it fully, but he trusts it. His restraint becomes his greatest strength. This new approach to magic transforms the meaning of cost. Instead of losing pieces of himself, Pep But learns to give energy willingly and recover it through balance. He studies the rhythms of magical flow, treating casting like breathing, an exchange rather than a sacrifice. His teachers notice the unusual steadiness in him, a calm beyond his apparent age. They sense that he carries ancient instinct, though they cannot explain it. The cycle of loss has evolved into the practice of harmony. Through Pep But, the story of Peppermint Butler's magic finds resolution. The art that once drained him now sustains him. The discipline that once isolated him now connects him to others. He teaches that power should never be hoarded, only shared and renewed. He shows that the true purpose of magic is not to defy nature, but to participate in it consciously. The hidden cost does not disappear, it transforms into understanding. He still feels echoes of the old exhaustion in quiet moments. When he looks at the moon, he senses faint memories of the spells that nearly broke him. Instead of sorrow, he feels gratitude. The universe took what it needed and gave him renewal. The balance has been restored. Through his rebirth, the cost of magic becomes the foundation of wisdom. In his later years, Pep But is remembered not as the necromancer who meddled with death, but as the master who taught that every act of creation requires humility. His students repeat his lessons long after he is gone. Energy must flow freely, knowledge must serve compassion, and power must never silence the self. These teachings become a cornerstone of U's magical philosophy. The Candy Kingdom, once sustained by secrecy, now thrives through understanding. The hidden cost of magic remains, but through him it becomes a shared responsibility rather than a private burden. Every wizard, every learner who practices balance carries a fragment of his legacy. The sacrifice of one becomes the enlightenment of many. Peppermint Butler's journey through magic mirrors the evolution of Ooh itself. Both began in ignorance, endured loss, and emerged wiser for it. He teaches that the true price of magic is not life or soul, but perspective. The realization that everything gained changes the one who gains it. His legacy endures not in power, retained, but in peace, restored. Morality in Ooh is not a fixed compass. It bends with perspective, shaped by time, experience, and necessity. Peppermint Butler lives at the intersection of all three. His existence becomes a mirror through which the world's ethics can be seen, not in black and white, but in reflection. Every decision he makes, every act of magic he performs, forces him to confront what it means to do the right thing when every choice carries a shadow. He learns that morality is not purity. It is endurance, the ability to hold conflicting truths without breaking. From the outside, the Candy Kingdom appears morally simple. Princess Bubblegum's rule provides order. Her citizens live in peace, but Peppermint Butler knows that this peace rests upon invisible compromises. He is the one who hides those compromises, the quiet custodian of moral contradictions. When the kingdom prospers, he knows it is because someone bore the unseen weight of what had to be done. Often, that someone is him. His actions are not noble in the traditional sense, they are necessary. And in necessity, morality becomes complicated. He does not deceive himself about the nature of his work. Every dark ritual, every bargain with powers beyond reason, leaves its mark. He understands that in another context, he would be called a villain. Yet he also knows that without these choices, countless lives would have ended. His moral framework does not depend on approval. It depends on outcome. He believes that if the greater good survives, the means can be forgiven. This utilitarian faith keeps him steady, but it also isolates him. Few can live with such clarity for long without wondering what it has cost their soul. Over time, the reflection he sees in his own moral mirror becomes less comforting. He begins to notice how easily justification can become habit. What once felt like sacrifice begins to feel like routine. Saving the world becomes expectation rather than choice. He wonders whether his calm acceptance, questionable acts, is wisdom or desensitization. The question haunts him quietly. He never stops serving, but he grows more reflective about why he does. His morality, once clean in intent, becomes a study in restraint, doing the wrong thing for the right reason, but stopping just short of forgetting that it is wrong. Princess Bubblegum mirrors this same dilemma in her scientific rule. Her ethics often clash with emotion, his clash with consequence. The two rarely speak of it, yet their silence holds shared understanding. They both know that leadership requires sacrifice. She sacrifices empathy for efficiency, he sacrifices innocence for loyalty. Together, they form a paradoxical harmony, the moral and the pragmatic bound in service to the same ideal. Neither could exist without the other. Her choices need his shadow, and his darkness needs her reason. Peppermint Butler's relationship with morality deepens as he grows closer to the supernatural world. Spirits and entities do not view good and evil the way mortals do. To them, morality is irrelevant, balance is sacred. Their logic reshapes his own. He begins to see that moral systems are constructs, tools for survival rather than universal truths. This realization does not make him cruel, it makes him patient. He judges others less harshly, understanding that every being acts from its own necessity. His empathy grows as his morality blurs. His dealings with death emphasize this evolution. Death never condemns him for meddling with forbidden forces, nor praises him for noble motives. To death, Peppermint Butler's choices are simply part of the pattern. Through these encounters, he learns that morality cannot exist without mortality. Only finite beings can feel the urgency of right and wrong. The eternal knows only rhythm. This understanding frees him from guilt, but leaves him with a heavier sense of responsibility. He realizes that to act morally in U is not to follow rules, it is to maintain rhythm. This perspective changes how he interacts with others. He begins to view kindness as a form of strategy rather than virtue. Helping someone is not about moral reward, it is about preserving equilibrium. His compassion becomes quiet and deliberate. When he comforts frightened candy citizens or eases the pain of dying creatures, he does so with calm precision, not sentimentality. To him, goodness is a discipline, not an emotion. Yet beneath that discipline lies fatigue. Constantly measuring morality against necessity wears him thin. He carries the weight of every compromise, every secret act that cannot be spoken aloud. His smile conceals reflection rather than contentment. Sometimes he looks at the Candy Kingdom's bright towers and wonders whether its beauty justifies all that has been hidden beneath it. He never finds an answer. Instead, he learns to live with the question. The Great Gum War shatters whatever certainty remains. In chaos, morality loses definition. Acts of destruction and protection blur into one. Peppermint Butler does what must be done to preserve the world, even as the cost grows unbearable. When the war ends, and he is reborn as Pep, but the universe gives him a gift, forgetfulness. His memories dissolve, but their lessons endure subconsciously. What remains is instinctive morality, untainted by justification. The young Pep but approaches life differently. He does not divide actions into good or bad. He measures them by curiosity and intention. His innocence allows him to experiment without cynicism. When faced with moral dilemmas, he pauses rather than decides immediately, letting empathy guide him. He embodies the balance his former self sought but could never achieve, the state where wisdom and innocence coexist. In Wizard City, Pep But's behavior toward others reflects this quiet moral rebirth. He treats rivals kindly, forgives insult quickly, and seeks understanding rather than dominance. He questions authority not out of rebellion, from a desire to learn. When confronted with moral greyness, he navigates it with grace rather than calculation. His choices show that true morality is not rigid adherence to principle, but fluid awareness of consequence. The old Peppermint Butler acted to maintain order. The young Pep but acts to preserve connection. Through his rebirth, morality becomes something new, an evolving mirror that no longer reflects guilt but growth. The Candy Necromancer has become a teacher of balance. His life demonstrates that morality is not about avoiding darkness, but about carrying light into it. He does not preach purity, he practices understanding. His students see in him a mentor who does not judge but guides, who does not command but listens. When he speaks about ethics, he rarely uses words like good or evil. Instead, he talks about tuning. He describes morality as an instrument that must be adjusted constantly, because the song of existence changes every day. His metaphor becomes a guiding philosophy for future generations of wizards. They learn from him that morality is maintenance, not perfection. To act rightly is to stay aware of imbalance and correct it gently. The mirror of morality that Peppermint Butler carries is one that reflects both shadow and light equally. In it, Ooh can see itself, not as a land divided by heroes and villains, but as a living system where every being contributes to balance in its own imperfect way. His story teaches that no one is purely good or evil. Everyone is a reflection of what they protect and what they endure. By the end of his journey, Peppermint Butler achieves what few in Ooh ever do: moral equilibrium. He understands that righteousness without humility breeds arrogance, and that humility without action breeds stagnation. His morality is dynamic, alive, self-correcting. When he looks into his own reflection, he no longer sees a servant or a sorcerer. He sees a participant in the cycle, doing his part to keep the world turning. Peppermint Butler's mirror does not offer comfort, it offers truth. It shows that every act of goodness carries a shadow, and every shadow can contain grace. His calm acceptance of this reality makes him one of Ooh's most complete souls. He proves that morality is not a line to follow, but a circle to understand. Every story of transformation begins with collapse. For Peppermint Butler, that collapse comes not from failure, but from fulfillment. He achieves everything he sets out to do, protects the Candy Kingdom, preserves Princess Bubblegum's rule, keeps balance between light and dark. Yet success carries its own kind of breaking. After centuries of maintaining control, he reaches the limits of what one soul can contain. His fall is not a moment of defeat. It is the natural conclusion of endurance stretched too far. The seeds of that fall are planted long before the Great Gum War. Peppermint Butler's strength has always been quiet, but the strain of his double life builds slowly. Every hidden ritual, every secret he keeps for the kingdom, weighs upon him. The Candy citizens see a loyal servant. The magical world sees a powerful sorcerer. Neither side sees the exhaustion beneath his composure. He has lived too long in balance, too long walking between two realities. Even for one as disciplined as he, equilibrium eventually turns to burden. As war brews, the structures he helped preserve begin to fracture. Bubblegum faces rebellion. Ooh itself trembles under forces beyond mortal comprehension. And Peppermint Butler finds himself confronting everything he tried to keep contained. His knowledge of death, his mastery of necromancy, his unshakable loyalty, none of it can stop what is coming. The universe does not collapse because of ignorance. It collapses because of inevitability. He understands that better than anyone. His fall begins the moment he realizes that his role as protector has reached its end. When the Great Gum War ignites, Peppermint Butler acts as the unseen stabilizer. He coordinates defenses, communes with spirits, and performs spells so vast they shake the structure of reality. The Candy Kingdom endures only because of his quiet interventions. Yet with every spell, he feels himself unraveling. The forces he summons draw from the deepest reserves of his being. The boundaries between his body and the magic blur until he becomes less person and more conduit. His strength is immense, but it comes at the cost of selfhood. He senses this disintegration even as he continues. His reflections grow slower, his speech quieter, as though he is fading before his own eyes. Princess Bubblegum notices but cannot intervene. She understands that what he is doing cannot be undone. Their last unspoken exchange, her steady glance, his faint smile, carries more meaning than words. It is acknowledgement. She will carry on building the future, and he will dissolve into the force that sustains it. Neither resists their role. When the conflict reaches its height, Peppermint Butler performs one final act of magic, something that defies categorization. The specifics are lost to time, but its purpose is clear: preservation. He binds together fragments of U's crumbling reality, ensuring that when the war ends, life can continue. The spell requires complete surrender. He releases everything: his memories, his power, his identity. The circle closes. The candy necromancer ceases to exist as a conscious being, his essence dispersed into the world he saved. What follows is not death, but renewal. From that dissolution, a new being forms, Pep But, a younger version, innocent and curious, unburdened by centuries of responsibility. His rebirth is not punishment, it is mercy. The universe, ever balancing itself, transforms the weight of his sacrifice into renewal. The dark sorcerer, who bore the burden of balance, is reborn as a student who must rediscover it. Through Pep But, the story begins again with softness instead of fatigue. At first, the young Peppermint Butler feels only fragments of his old self, fleeting instincts, small habits, inexplicable awareness of magic's rhythm. He does not know where these come from. His teachers in Wizard City see potential, but also strangeness, as if something older looks through his eyes. The magic within him responds, as though remembering. He grasps lessons easily, yet feels disinterest in power for its own sake. Every time he channels energy, he does so with calm familiarity, as though he has done it for lifetimes. His new life is not without conflict. In Wizard City, students treat him with suspicion. Some know of the old Peppermint Butler's reputation and assume this young version is the same in disguise. Others mock him for his polite demeanor and candy heritage. Yet Pep But meets ridicule with patience. He refuses to prove himself through arrogance or anger. He learns quietly, listens carefully, and accepts setbacks with grace. What once was authority becomes humility. His rebirth transforms mastery into mindfulness. The lessons he learns in this life are not about summoning or domination. They are about belonging. The old Peppermint Butler lived between worlds, never fully accepted by either. The new one begins to integrate. He finds joy in companionship, curiosity, failure, laughter in confusion. His power manifests not through control, but through empathy. In helping others understand magic, he begins to heal what his former self lost, to connection. Even so, echoes of his past remain. At times, when he faces moral decisions, he feels a sudden clarity that exceeds his years. When others rush into conflict, he senses the long consequences and chooses caution. These instincts mark the continuity between lives. His renewal is not erasure, it is evolution. The wisdom of his old self returns in softened form, stripped of exhaustion and ego. He carries the memory of darkness, not as trauma, but as understanding. The turning point in his second life comes when he recognizes that magic is not meant to be possessed. It is meant to be shared. He begins teaching even before being asked to. Younger students gravitate toward his calm demeanor. He shows them how to feel magic rather than force it, how to listen to the flow of energy instead of commanding it. He becomes what his older self never had time to be, a mentor whose kindness carries the gravity of experience disguised as intuition. In his guidance, the philosophy of renewal emerges. He teaches that every fall is necessary, every ending a beginning in disguise. He uses himself as quiet proof, though few realize it. He explains that decay is not failure, but transformation, that losing oneself is sometimes the only way to return whole. His words spread beyond Wizard City, influencing future generations of magic users who learn from his example that wisdom can grow from surrender. Princess Bubblegum, though she appears only briefly in this chapter of his life, feels his presence still. The reborn Pep But reminds her of something she cannot name. His politeness, his curiosity, his unwavering steadiness, all feel familiar. She never questions it. Some part of her understands that the balance he gave his life for now lives again, renewed and unburdened. Through him, the Candy Kingdom's legacy continues in gentler form. The renewal of Peppermint Butler is more than a personal rebirth. It symbolizes Oo's resilience. The world, too, endured apocalypse after apocalypse, each collapse birthing something stranger and kinder. His life follows the same rhythm. The necromancer who once spoke to death now embodies life's persistence. The fall that once seemed tragic reveals itself as grace. In time, Pep But's journey reaches quiet fulfillment. He becomes a teacher of balance, a guide for young wizards, a friend to beings who once feared him. The memories of his past life remain hidden, but the lessons endure. He proves that redemption is not the erasure of wrongdoing, but the continuation of purpose with new awareness. The world does not need him to remember, it needs him to live. His story ends where all cycles end, in acceptance. The Candy Necromancer, who fell beneath the weight of his knowledge, rises again, lighter and wiser. His renewal completes the arc that began in secrecy and ends in openness. The servant becomes the sage, the shadow becomes the light. Through him, Oo learns that even in a world built from ruin, there is always space for rebirth. The rebirth of Peppermint Butler into Pep But marks not an ending, but a delicate continuation, a new phase where wisdom wears the face of innocence. In Wizard City, far from the halls of the Candy Kingdom, the story of his renewal unfolds quietly. Gone are the centuries of burden and secrecy. What remains is curiosity, humility, and a gentle echo of greatness that once bridged life and death. As an apprentice, Pep But does not seek power. He seeks understanding. His growth becomes a reflection of what happens when knowledge is rediscovered with a lighter heart. Wizard City is unlike the Candy Kingdom. It thrives not on order or sweetness, but on competition and ambition. Every student wants to prove something, to themselves, to their masters, to the unseen hierarchies of magic that measure worth in strength. In this environment, Pep But stands out not because he is extraordinary, but because he refuses to compete. His polite tone, steady composure, and genuine kindness seem out of place among the bluster of young magicians. He observes before acting, listens before speaking. Where others rush to display spells, he studies their structure, watching how magic behaves when left alone. At first, his classmates mistake patience for weakness. They whisper about the old Peppermint Butler, calling him a villain reborn, a remnant of darkness disguised as candy. The legends surrounding his past life follow him like a faint shadow. Even his instructors watch him carefully, uneasy about what he might remember. Pep But, however, feels no need to defend himself. Their mistrust only reinforces his belief that true mastery lies not in performance, but in restraint. The more others challenge him, the calmer he becomes. What sets him apart is his relationship with magic itself. He treats it as conversation, not conquest. When casting, he listens to the rhythm of energy before shaping it. His spells appear simple, but they flow naturally, as if magic trusts him. This intuitive connection puzzles his teachers. They recognize technique beyond his training, but cannot explain it. Pep But himself cannot explain it either. He only knows that when he closes his eyes, he feels a quiet guidance, as if the world itself is reminding him of lessons once learned long ago. In one of his early trials, Pep But is tasked with summoning a minor spirit. The exercise is meant to test control, yet when the spirit appears, it greets him warmly instead of resisting. It calls him by name, his old name. The classroom falls silent. Pep But does not react with fear or confusion. He bows, thanks the spirit, and releases it gently. Later, when questioned by his teachers, he claims he must have read about that particular ritual somewhere. But in truth, he feels something stir deep within him, a memory, not of events, but of understanding. The past does not return, it simply reawakens as instinct. This instinct sets the foundation for his philosophy as an apprentice. Pep But does not. Separate light and dark magic, seeing both as aspects of one living system, he studies necromancy alongside healing, transformation alongside dissolution. To him, all forces are parts of the same conversation, the dialogue between creation and decay. When asked if he fears darkness, he answers that ignorance, not darkness, is the real danger. His perspective challenges the city's dogma, earning him quiet admiration from those who learn to see his wisdom for what it is. Through his studies, he encounters new mentors, each representing fragments of what he once mastered. Some teach form, others patience, others moral focus. Pep But absorbs everything, not with ambition, but gratitude. He helps classmates struggling with spells, explains concepts that teachers overcomplicate, and repairs broken magical instruments after hours. He becomes a fixture of kindness in a place that thrives on competition. Slowly, the city that once doubted him begins to recognize his value, not as a prodigy, but as a presence that brings balance. His humility does not come from weakness, but from experience beyond memory. In moments of solitude, he senses the vastness of what he once knew. He does not long for it, he respects its absence. Forgetfulness, he understands, is a gift. It allows knowledge to be rediscovered without arrogance. Each new spell learned feels like meeting an old friend under a different sky. The joy he feels in learning reflects the peace his past self could never achieve. One of his greatest tests arrives when a dangerous magical rift opens beneath Wizard City, threatening to consume it. While others panic, Pep But feels calm recognition. He knows, without knowing why, how to stabilize the distortion. He sketches a circle in chalk, whispers an incantation that no one has taught him, and the rift closes quietly. His teachers demand an explanation, but he offers none. He insists it was instinct. They accept reluctantly, though whispers spread again that perhaps the old Peppermint Butler has returned. After the event, Pep But sits alone beneath the night sky. He looks at his hands and feels a faint trembling. Not fear, but awareness. For a moment he understands everything, the circle, the balance, the cost of magic, the friendship with death, and then it fades, leaving only warmth. He realizes that he does not need the full memory of his past to carry its wisdom. Experience, once painful, has become intuition. Renewal is complete. In the months that follow, Pep But becomes a quiet leader among students. He teaches by example, reminding others that mastery has nothing to do with dominance. He shows them that failure is not humiliation, but dialogue with magic itself. When asked why he works so hard to help others, he answers simply that every act of kindness strengthens the weave of the world. His philosophy spreads through Wizard City like soft light, altering its tone from pride to patience. Pep But's journey as an apprentice becomes symbolic of Oo's new age, a world no longer obsessed with survival, but with harmony. His approach to magic blends the old and the new, bridging ancient wisdom with youthful innocence. Through him, Wizard City becomes a reflection of what Ooo has become after countless cycles of destruction and rebirth, a place where curiosity coexists with conscience. Princess Bubblegum eventually hears of his achievements. She visits the city quietly, watching from afar as he teaches others, smiling as he once did in her service. She recognizes the calm in his movements, the patience in his words. She does not speak to him. She doesn't need to. The sight of him living freely, unburdened, tells her everything she needs to know. The balance he once fought to preserve has returned in the simplest form. Life continuing, love enduring, knowledge reborn. By the time Pep But completes his training, he no longer thinks of himself as student or master. He understands that learning never ends, that wisdom is a process of continuous renewal. The candy necromancer who once commanded spirits has become the humble magician who listens to them. His story, once steeped in secrecy and sacrifice, now breathes in openness and peace. The apprentice of Wizard City is the purest version of Peppermint Butler, not because he is powerful, but because he is whole. He represents the culmination of everything his past self sought. Balance between knowledge and humility, between action and stillness, between mortality and continuity. His presence reminds everyone around him that power means nothing without patience, and that redemption is not an event, but a practice. In this final transformation, Peppermint Butler achieves what every being in Ooo strives for, a moment of harmony with the world. The circle is complete, not through conquest or glory, but through acceptance. The apprentice remains forever a student, forever renewed. By the time Ooo settles into its age of calm, the world has changed countless times, and yet traces of Peppermint Butler remain everywhere. Not in monuments or songs, but in the quiet equilibrium that defines life after chaos. His legacy is not written in grand gestures. It exists in the silence between them, in the way magic is practiced with care, in the way power is approached with humility, and in the way knowledge is treated not as dominance, but as stewardship. For a character who began as a servant, his influence ends up woven into the very structure of the world he once protected. Peppermint Butler's legacy begins with endurance. He survives eras of transformation that consume others. He witnesses kingdoms rise, fall, and reshape themselves. Through every change, his presence remains consistent, a reminder that continuity itself can be an act of heroism. His loyalty to Princess Bubblegum anchors the Candy Kingdom through centuries of instability. His mastery of forbidden magic guards Ooo against threats unseen by any hero. Yet his true endurance is not physical, it is moral and spiritual. He proves that service, even when carried out in shadow, can preserve light. His story embodies the paradox at the heart of Ooo, that sweetness and darkness coexist naturally. The Candy Kingdom stands as both symbol of innocence and monument of control. Peppermint Butler bridges these opposites. He learns to live between moral extremes, between Bubblegum's calculated science and the unrestrained power of the arcane. By doing so, he reveals that harmony is not achieved through purity, but through balance. His life becomes the answer to one of the show's oldest questions: can good exist without shadow? Peppermint Butler's existence says yes, but only when both are accepted as parts of a single truth. His influence extends far beyond the Candy Kingdom. The philosophy he develops, magic as a dialogue with balance rather than a conquest of power, spreads quietly through Ooo. Generations of wizards, scholars, and wanderers trace their understanding of magic back to him, sometimes without realizing it. His teachings ripple through Wizard City, where Pep But's presence redefines what it means to be a magician. No longer do students view necromancy or elemental manipulation as moral absolutes. Instead, they learn to ask why they use their power, not just how. The moral flexibility that once isolated Peppermint Butler becomes Oo's guiding wisdom. The world that follows the Great Gum War is gentler, not because it lacks conflict, but because it remembers his example. The Candy Kingdom learns restraint. Princess Bubblegum's leadership softens, shaped by memories of a friend who carried burdens she never could. The other realms, once divided by fear or ambition, slowly begin to trust each other again. The unity that defines Oo's peaceful era reflects the balance Peppermint Butler embodied. His magic was never meant to conquer, it was meant to sustain. In the calm that follows, the echoes of his influence hum beneath every act of creation and renewal. His greatest legacy, however, lies not in power, but in transformation. Few beings in Ooh experience as many rebirths as he does: servant, sorcerer, necromancer, mentor, apprentice. Each incarnation refines him, peeling away the illusions of control until only essence remains. In his final form as Pep But, he becomes proof that redemption is not a single act, but a continuous process. Through him, the story of Ooh reminds viewers that no identity is fixed and no soul is beyond renewal. Change is not punishment, it is evolution. Even his relationship with death becomes part of this legacy. What began as a transaction ends as friendship, a symbol of reconciliation between life and its inevitable conclusion. Death, who once instructed him, ultimately respects him as an equal. Their partnership shifts the cosmic balance itself, softening the boundaries between worlds. Because of Peppermint Butler, mortality in Ooh is no longer something to fear. It becomes part of existence's continuity. The line between ending and beginning fades, replaced by an endless exchange of energy and memory. The Candy Kingdom honors him not with statues, but with continuation. The systems he built, protective wards, magical harmonies, the unseen architecture of peace, remain active long after his transformation. The citizens, blissfully unaware, live their simple lives, surrounded by the echoes of his work. They dance, laugh, and build, without realizing that the stability they enjoy exists because of a servant who once guarded them from the dark. This anonymity would please him. Peppermint Butler never sought credit. His satisfaction came from knowing the world functioned as it should, even if no one knew why. In Wizard City, Pep But students pass on his teachings. They describe him as a mentor who never lectured, a magician who preferred questions to answers. His lessons become parables, stories of patience, humility, and listening. Future generations of wizards refer to his approach as the Peppermint Way, the practice of aligning intention with awareness, of treating every spell as conversation. The name begins as a joke, but over time it becomes doctrine. His kindness, once underestimated, becomes the new measure of strength. Philosophically, Peppermint Butler's legacy reshapes Oo's understanding of heroism. Traditional heroes like Finn and Jake fought external threats. Peppermint Butler fought entropy itself, the slow erosion of meaning, the imbalance that corrodes existence from within. His victories are invisible, his battles spiritual. He never slays monsters for glory. He converses with them, understands them, and often finds ways to integrate their chaos into balance. In this way, he represents the quiet heroism of endurance. His story tells that not every saviour must fight. Some simply hold the world together. His life also stands as commentary on knowledge. Adventure Time often treats wisdom as both gift and curse. Peppermint Butler embodies that tension. He learns everything about magic, death, morality, and yet his reward is solitude. Only through rebirth does he discover that knowledge without connection is hollow. His legacy teaches that intellect must be tempered with empathy, that the greatest truth is not knowing but caring. This realization completes the philosophical arc of his existence, transforming the once cold necromancer into a figure of compassion. In the end, Peppermint Butler's story mirrors the world he helped shape. Ooh itself has fallen and risen countless times, each iteration softer, wiser, more integrated. He is its reflection, a being who endures destruction and re-emerges kinder. His journey from secrecy to sincerity parallels the journey of the world from survival to harmony. Both learn that permanence is impossible, but continuity is eternal. If one were to seek his legacy in tangible form, it would not be found in relics or ruins. It would be found in the air, the quiet hum that fills Oo's evenings when balance is restored. It would be heard in the laughter of candy citizens, felt in the stability of kingdoms, seen in the peace of Wizard City's halls. Every moment of calm is his monument. Every act of kindness carries his echo. In the quiet corners of the afterlife, death sometimes speaks his name, not as warning, but as remembrance. The two share occasional conversation, reflecting on the cycles they have witnessed. Death notes how rare it is for mortals to grasp the rhythm of existence so completely. Peppermint Butler replies, as he always has, with politeness and gratitude. For him, legacy is not what endures after life, but what continues through it. Thus, the Candy Necromancer's story ends not in grandeur, but in grace. From servant to sage, from secret keeper to teacher, his arc becomes one of the most complete in all of Oo. His existence proves that strength does not require purity, and that redemption is not escape but transformation. Peppermint Butler's legacy is the thread that connects the living and the dead, the scientific and the mystical, the innocent and the wise. He is the bridge that endures when others fade, the quiet pulse reminding the world that balance, once learned, never dies.